Hello, you wonderful people. So for today's video, I'm going to talk about the trailer that just came out for season 2 of The Umbrella Academy. If you haven't seen it already, I'll include a link to it in the description down below. But obviously, just want to talk about some of the things we saw in the trailer. I don't know what I really thought when we saw the end of, this season finale of like where they'd end up. I guess somewhere in my mind, I was thinking maybe they'd go to the future, but it's like, well, why would they go to the future? The future is, an apocalyptic wasteland. Obviously, 5 would know better than anyone. So it would make sense that they would end up in the past. But what's interesting, it seems like the storyline is that rather than everything ending in 2019 like it was before, now everything's ending in 1963. So it's like, everything still seemed like it went according to plan anyway. So I'm like, why would they make it so that the apocalypse is why would the apocalypse still need to happen in 1963? Like, why is it kind of getting expedited? Because it's interesting too, because it's like, it seems like and I think even Bob was almost saying it, like the apocalypse seems like it's following them, which is like, maybe there's a reasoning behind that. Maybe, I don't know. I just thought that was just kind of fascinating. Or maybe it's supposed to be kind of like, maybe a storyline they'll find where it's kind of like, maybe there's no changing it. Maybe the apocalypse is such a fixed thing in history that maybe it's something they did in the past that makes it so the apocalypse happens, or whatever. But the fact that, obviously there's other factors that need to be at play here, like the commission and everything, but still it's like, is it just like literally the commission along with just time itself being like, no, this has to happen and you're not going to stop it, so we're just going to expedite it even faster now? Or like, obviously there's a lot of pieces going on at once. What was interesting is when Hazel ends up being the one that points this out to 5, and when you notice he's got like grayish white hair, so it's like, okay, so last thing we saw at the end of season 1 was you leaving with your lady. So I'm assuming maybe this entire time, like obviously your employers probably aren't too happy about that, so they're probably like following, well, I was about to say, like, not unless you were getting followed throughout time, because I'm wondering, have they been bouncing all over the place, and that's why, like, who knows how long he's been on a run with his lady. Maybe she's not around anymore, or maybe he just dyed his hair to kind of, like, hide his identity. I don't know. But part of me is also wondering, like, maybe it could just be that he got there like, they're there in the 60s, maybe he got there in like the 20s or something, and he's been living his life, and then the apocalypse happens, so he goes back in time to try and get 5 in them to like undo it. Who knows? Like, obviously a lot of stuff is kind of unknown to us, unless you've read the comic book, obviously. But what was interesting though, and I was curious, and the biggest thing I was wondering going into the season was what the family dynamic was going to be, especially after season 1. Like, obviously they all have their own issues and parts to play, and everything kind of playing out, especially after the whole Vanya thing, her playing her part. And I was wondering what that was going to look like. But it seems like the family's basically split up, because everyone's basically living their lives in the 60s, because I guess it's like, well, there's nothing to go back to, and they probably can't go back to their time without interfering with stuff and just kind of making things potentially worse, or maybe just whatever the means that led them there. It's like it was a one-way trip, so there's no way for them to actually time travel, so they're stuck there anyway. But we see like Klaus is he's head of a cult. Okay, that's interesting. Allison and Luther, it seems like they're not together. Like, they had their complicated situation last season, so it's like, sadly, it seems like Allison's seems like she's trying to move on and finding, happiness with someone else. It seems like Luther's just kind of a bit of a fighter. Looks like Diego's locked up in a mental facility. Ben's just out and about, and that's what kept confusing. I was like, is he alive or is he still a ghost? It seems like he's still a ghost, but who knows if that doesn't change, because later on he's like physically, once again, it's been a while since I've seen season 1, so I might not be remembering things, but it's like he could, well, I think he eventually learned how to physically interact with stuff even as a ghost, didn't he? I don't remember, but like, obviously it seems like we're going to be seeing a lot more of Ben, so I think that's going to be pretty dope. Maybe there's going to be some way around him coming back to life, or maybe, maybe circumstances change, because it's like, oh, did Ben come with us? And Klaus is like, nah, apparently ghosts can't time travel. He's like, what the hell? So it's like, so obviously, like, he's still a ghost at certain points. Maybe he comes back to life from later, who knows? What I also thought was kind of interesting is, if you look at Vanya, it doesn't seem like she has her powers, and that's what I'm wondering about. Not necessarily that she's having powers, but at least based on what we saw in the trailers, it didn't look like she was using it. Once again, not unless there's something from season 1 I'm forgetting, because there could easily be, because I'm going to have to rewatch season 1, because I've forgotten a lot. But it didn't seem like she was using her powers. A part of me is thinking, like, either she can't, obviously because she can't control them, or she's just going to be like, after everything that went down season 1 with me completely losing control, she's like, I probably can't go down that route again, so she's probably going to not use her powers just because she's scared to. So, but it's just interesting because everyone else is using their powers except for her, so I thought that was kind of fascinating. Like I said, maybe if you go back and watch the trailer though, it might be a thing of like, oh, you can pinpoint, oh no, that's her using her powers, and maybe just because things are out of context, I didn't quite catch it, but regardless. What's also interesting though too is we see that later on they're meeting their dad. Obviously he's younger, and so he's like, okay, hey, these are your kids. Each one of us has our own powers. This, and this. I mean, you know, obviously Diego makes a wisecrack about Allison not using her powers, and then she uses it. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Because remember last time we saw Allison, you know, was when her throat got slit, so she couldn't use her powers at the time. But maybe over enough time, it's healed naturally, so she can use her powers again. So I think that was kind of a nice little touch to be like, oh, like, don't count Allison out of this, you know, superpower situation yet. Either way, it seems like we're embarking on more wild, crazy, you know, misadventures and shenanigans. I'm very, very excited for season 2. Obviously, these are just some of the things going through my head. I'd love to get to know your thoughts in the comments down below. What are some things you expect to see? What are some things you want to see? Let me know. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.